All right, hey, welcome everybody to the first installment of the Vote Common Good podcast, Why This President Has to Go edition. So every week or every day or every time the president earns it, we are going to have a podcast with a thought leader, with a person impacted, with a person who has an opinion about why the president has to go. Donald Trump has been the president since, I guess, January 20th. Or is it the 21st, Rob? 20th or 21st?
21st.
21st of 2017. And I will just say that for me personally, every day I have said he has earned the right for someone to say, this guy's got to go. He's just, I believe him to be incompetent. I believe him to be cruel. I believe him to be unable to do his job. I think it's really a problem. And I think he should resign the presidency immediately because of this coronavirus. And this is April 1st, 2020 that we're recording this podcast as episode 1. I'm here with Robb Ryerse. Robb Ryerse is the political director for Vote Common Good, which is an effort that I have given my all of life to. I'm the executive director. Rob is also a pastor at a church in Fayetteville, Arkansas. He is also the director, executive director, interim director. Do you have a fancy title for the brand new
executive
Congress?
Director?
Executive director. Wow. Hey, well, we're going to talk as executive director to political director today, if you don't mind.
That sounds good.
Of a group called Brand New Congress, which Rob was also related to when he ran for Congress in 2018 as a Republican in Fayetteville, Arkansas area. So, Rob, I thought you'd be a great partner on this because many an hour we have sat on the bus for the Faith, Hope, and Love for a Change on Election Day tour, as we were touring the country from January through the beginning of March before we were put on hiatus, mostly because the President of the United States continued to deny, delay, and dither. See what I did there? I'm a preacher. His denials, his delays, and then his dithering on what the federal government's response should be to this pandemic has hurt this country severely. It has caused and it's been an unmitigated disaster, and I think is probably a countless number of people's lives have been changed or lost because the federal government did not do the most basic things that our federal government should do in the case of a pandemic. So we've spent many an hour talking about the reasons that the president should no longer be the president of the United States. And it's looking more and more to me like it's going to take the people of this country on Election Day, November 3rd, and this is the first time I've ever said this out loud, if Election Day, November 3rd, actually takes place in the United States.
Can we talk about that first?
Yeah, let's do it.
There's a lot of people that feel like, well, what if Donald Trump cancels the election? Well, Donald Trump can't cancel the election.
Right. He can't. Right.
He cannot. The election. So what is set in the Constitution is that there will be an election, and that on January 20 or the 21st, whatever it is, the new president will be inaugurated. Congress has set the date as being the first Tuesday in November. So that's a federal law. Congress is the only ones who can change that. Now, they can, but the president has no constitutional power to cancel the election. So Congress might change the date. They would have to change it to something that would allow for there to be an inauguration in January. Because that's what the Constitution says. There is no other option. So
you're saying, as someone who apparently studied this more than I have, you're saying that what the Constitution mandates is that a new president would be inaugurated on the 20th of January? That's what's been, not that an election needs to take place?
No, then an election has to happen prior to that. And so
just Congress any time prior to that?
Yes. So Congress has set that the appropriate time would be the couple of months before, being, the first Tuesday.
Well said. Okay. So Congress could decide, we've lost Rob on the video stream just for a second because Rob is communicating via his
Sorry,
iPad and will occasionally get phone calls that will ring through to his iPad. So if you're watching this on the video stream, that's what will occasionally happen. But hey, not bad for a couple of middle-aged and upper middle-aged guys taking care of quarantine issues. This isn't too bad. We're staying alive. So your point being, well, Donald Trump can't stop the election. My concern has never been that Donald Trump himself, or he would use the executive branch to stop the election, but that somehow Congress would see it in its wisdom because of the pandemic to have to do something about this election. And because my concern is, as maybe yours is that the virus could come back at a level of concern when the winter months come, because that's how many of these viruses, is that how you say the plural of virus? These viri, this is how they move and operate, is that they tend to come back in certain conditions. And in the United States, when winter starts to come, which in many places, October can feel like winter, that people are going to start to panic. And then if the election does go forward, there's going to be all these claims that it was not a fair election and yada, yada, yada. I'm terrified about that. I have locked into a November 3rd outcome for this election.
Yeah. I think what's more likely than anything else, and this is pure speculation at this point, but I think what's more likely than anything else is there being a vote by mail initiative that will be national, that what Congress will do will release funds to make it possible for states to conduct a nationwide vote by mail.
Yeah, the states that want to.
Yeah, and I think most states probably will.
Well, I sure hope so. I mean, I think that would be, there's a lot of things that change in society and culture and all because a circumstance presents itself, not because there's incremental change. I mean, I do believe in acupunctural interventions, but I don't know that I think that most big changes in our life and our society have happened because someone's made little small adjustments as we go. And normally they're not even planned. The big events that have changed in your own life, if you sort of look back on it, or in our society, have happened because a set of circumstances has presented itself. And so it could be that we end up with, base minimum income, that we end up with a whole different healthcare system, not just one that is funded through Medicare, but a whole different delivery system has to come out of this pandemic, and perhaps even the way we do our elections and having them happen more by mail and less demand for an in-person show up. Now, I have people who've said to me in the last couple of days, and this is another reason why this president needs to go, is that there are many people who tend to vote for Democrats in parts of our society who are more negatively impacted by mail-in voting, because it requires addresses, it requires a person to operate at home, it requires addresses for return mail. It just requires a whole level of complication that doesn't exist in other places. So I know there's a lot of people who've started to already, who have been very supportive of by mail voting, but one of the reasons it's not as widely spread from some people's vantage point is because it disincentivizes and makes it more difficult on some people to vote than for others. So I don't know.
Yeah. On the other hand, I wonder about if I've long advocated for Election Day being a national holiday, because I think it not having it as a national holiday disenfranchises working people.
Nice.
And so I think that, I don't know. We'd have to, I'm not an expert on vote by mail. It would be interesting to see it would be interesting to have a conversation with some people that live in states, like Washington and California. Now, one of the impacts that vote by mail has, that I know for sure, is that it delays election results. It makes the count a lot slower. And so those of us that, want to stay up late and watch MSNBC and find out, who won,
It could be up to 5 days. Well, we won't get into all this, but it could be up to 5 days because the postmarking in places that have mail, that I understand it is, they have to mail it by election day, whatever day that's determined, and then it has a certain number of days to arrive. Mm-hmm. And man, I mean, the claims of anyway, we won't get into all that. But okay, so we're in the midst of the coronavirus. The president of the United States has continued to delay, to deny, and to dither. I thought starting this podcast on April 1st seemed like just a smart day. It's often considered April Fool's Day. And if there was ever a day in which you'd want to have some commentary about the president, it's the day when you're thinking about foolishness and the deadly level of foolishness. And Rob, I want to hear your thoughts on this. I'll just say this. What I'm watching out of Donald Trump, and I pay attention to it as closely as I can, which is pretty closely. He's behaving exactly as he has behaved for the last 3 years as president, 3+ years as president, and how he behaved in the election season. So he is right on course. He is doing the very same things that he has done repeatedly, and now the consequences are even more deadly. I think it was deadly before. The harm he has caused to this planet and to the well-being of all who live on it is immeasurable. But now to watch this happen around this, it is incredible how his inability to take in the truth, if the truth is not somehow a part of the imagination that he lives in. Mm-hmm. I heard him talking back to a CNN reporter 2 days ago, and he was explaining making excuses for why he downplayed the virus previously. And it was, I don't want to give people bad news. I want people to have hope and be confident, as if hope and confidence is something you only have when you don't have the truth, as if it's the alternative to the truth. This is a man who so lacks in confidence, so lacks in hope, so lacks in any sense of being a person of guts, of stick-to-itiveness, of sort of what's the word I'm looking for when someone rises above? Yeah,
perseverance. That
strength.
Yes. That moral character that's heroic.
Yes, that you act that way. In difficulty? That's when you act heroic. That's when you act with strength. You don't act with strength and confidence and feel-goodery when you're like, well, I don't really know what's going on, and good thing you're keeping the truth from me. Real strength is that you will take on an issue full front and you'll walk through it. And it's hard for all of us. So I've just watched this person function in such a weak and unbelievably unhelpful and unhealthy way that it felt like April 1st is the day when this segment of the podcast, and we're going to have this be a regular segment of the Vote Common Good podcast, different people reflecting on circumstances of the day. Why this president has to go? Because he's unable. The one thing you need a president to do at a time like this is to tell you the truth. That's pretty much the starting point. Yeah. Now you can fluff it, and look, you and I are, have been working preachers and pastors, so we know how to tell the truth with some flavor, right? We know how to tell the truth with some help. There's a lot of ways you can tell the truth, but he is so far from it, and speaks about his inability to tell the truth as if it's a feature of his life and not a flaw. And it's so that's what I got.
Yeah.
What do you
so. You mentioned us being preachers and telling the truth, and it reminded me of Frederick Buechner's really great book on preaching called Telling the Truth, and the subtitle is "The Gospel as Tragedy, Comedy, and Fairy Tale."
Oh,
and he talks about how to tell the truth, to tell the good news, it begins as tragedy. Like you have got to face the reality that exists honestly and authentically, and tell that true story before you can ever get to the comedy or the fairy tale.
Nice.
You've got to start with the tragedy. And this is a president that has skipped the tragedy and the comedy of success, and gone straight to the fairy tale of the happily ever after.
That's nice.
And it's a fairy tale of his own making that is not rooted in American, in not just American, but human ingenuity, rising up and facing a challenge, and people coming together and working together. There's none of that is a part of his story. It is all about his own personal standing, how this affects him,
unbelievable,
and his poll numbers, his ratings. I mean, that was one of the most offensive things I think I've ever heard a president
remind the
talk
listeners,
about.
because people may not be listening to this on April 1st. They may be listening to it on April 3rd and have totally forgotten about that comment from a couple of days ago because it was wiped out.
A couple of days ago, the
nonsense.
president was bragging about how his daily press conferences are a ratings bonanza, as if he thinks the American people are tuning in for him, that this is another episode of The Apprentice. No, the American people are tuning in because they're terrified of what's happening. They want actual news from the people that should be trusted. It has nothing, and it is offensive that he would brag about ratings that as if he's the star of the show in the midst of this tragedy. He's utterly incompetent and unqualified to be president of the United States. This president has got to go.
This president has got to go. I think we're coming up with something there. I think it's going to become a buzzword. That's what's going to happen. People are going to be saying, this president's got to go. Look, I think that's a really great pickup on this president, and that kind of impulse, that's the thing he thinks about and feels good about and needs to look. I find the man to be, and my wife says I've got a real issue with him, but I find the man to be some unsympathetic character to me right now, right? Very unsympathetic. But when it breaks through with a bit of empathy, a bit of sympathy for the guy, I just think, what a tragically sad and incapable man. And watching him have to stand up there and live in two realities, sometimes day after day. And I don't know what he's going to be saying today. I'm sure he's going to be running the briefing in another half an hour or hour, if it's not happening right now from the time we're recording this, that he's going to pull back on all those deaths. He's not going to be able to tolerate. He will not be able to tolerate saying that 200,000 people are going to die in the midst of the Trump pandemic. And the Trump pandemic is going to be the thing that he is known for and that he caused and that his legacy is going to be tarnished by. And he is not going to be able to stand it, and he will happy talk his way into a fanciful world that is gone. And that is incredibly dangerous because we have chosen over 217 years or whatever it has been to infuse a significant amount of leadership into the executive of the executive branch, the President of the United States. In our governmental system, that role that he is now occupying has an incredible amount of influence and power that is only his. It's not like it can be shared with someone else. This is not like a baseball team where if your third baseman isn't hitting well, you hope that your right fielder will. There is no one else who can do the things that his role does, and there's no competency inside of this administration to offload those from his to-do list to someone else. So there are so many things not happening. Did you happen to hear the audio recording of his conversation with the governors, which would now have been 2 days ago? So I heard the recording yesterday, and it was from the day before. Did you happen to hear this recording?
I haven't heard it, but I fear that what you're about to say is not going to surprise me.
It's the one where Governor Bullock, who's the governor of the great state of Montana, was on a call with Trump, and it was the governor's call in the morning, and Anthony Fauci asked the governors, "Do you have all the test kits that you currently need?" And Governor Bullock responded and said, "We do not. and then went into about a minute and a half long description of why they don't have them in the places where they need them to do the contact tracing, which for people who are familiar with that, they know that means that a person is tested, and then if you test positive, then they have people who trace your contacts. They go back through your life of the last 2 weeks or so. Whom else did you contact? And then they contact those people to have them tested to see if you've spread the disease. This is a crucially important part of testing. So Governor Bullock said, no, we do not have those. And before Fauci can respond, Donald Trump interrupts and says, well, Dr. Fauci, you can respond to that if you want, but I just want to say, this is the first I've been hearing that we're short on tests. We have, and then he said, we're testing more people than any other country in the world, as if the competition is how many other tests have been done by other countries. And he said, we're rolling out these new tests. This is the first I've heard. I haven't heard any of this before. Basically saying that's not true, Governor Bullock, that you don't have enough tests. I haven't heard this. Now, the two parts of this that are so stunning are, number one, he was just saying days ago there were not enough tests. Of course there aren't. But then he heard that tests are being made and they're getting out, and someone told him we've tested more than anyone else. So he gets it in his head, I'm succeeding because I'm doing more tests we're doing more tests in the country that I'm the president of than South Korea did of their tests, even though the number of people in South Korea is 51 million and we have 307 million, roughly speaking. And the second problem is he's then saying to a governor who's telling him this is what's happening on the ground right now, that's not true, I don't want to hear it. And this is the denial. This is the same denial as all the denials they did during the campaign. This is why when people say, well, don't bring up stuff that didn't happen. Don't bring up the past. We have to focus on right now. The problem is what's happening right now is the same thing that has been happening.
Yeah. Yeah. When people
Pardon
say,
my yelling.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. When people say, when someone tells you who they are, believe them.
Yeah.
And Donald Trump has told us who he is. And he is acting absolutely consistently as he has from before the campaign, when he was a failed businessman and a reality TV star. This is who he's always been. And
you're just being not nice there.
Yeah. Here's I think one of the other things Donald Trump does. And this is, I think, why I agree with you that it's difficult for me right now to find sympathy for him. I think he has a tendency to project onto other people what he actually is doing. And so the politicalization, politicalization of the quarantine and the pandemic and all of it,
yep.
and accusing the Democrats of playing politics with it. That's in fact what he's done. So many different things. The assigning of ill motives to other people.
Right.
That is in fact what he's done. His questioning the media and calling everything fake news and assuming that everyone is lying about him.
What a liar does.
That's what he does.
Yes.
And so he's projecting onto everybody else the responses that he has. And that's what's so, it's such in stark contrast to what we've seen at other times of crisis in our country, where we have had presidential leadership that has risen above partisanship, that has risen above the normal kind of grinding of governmental gears.
And in a moment like this, people want to give it to him.
Yes. Yeah. And I think, I was having a conversation with our family last night about approval ratings. And I think, his approval ratings are actually higher than we expect right now.
Going up.
I think that's because the American people at a time like this want to give him the benefit of the doubt. They want a president to lead well.
Yep.
And they are assuming that he's going to do what Barack Obama did, or what George W. Bush did, or what Ronald Reagan did, or Bill Clinton. And you think about times in our nation's history when a president has been able to be the comforter in chief, the one who's been able to speak inspiring words, comforting words. Like, there has been no, like, we have nothing to fear but fear itself kind of moment out
none
of
of
this
it.
man.
And to that point, Rob, another reason he's got to go. I have watched a number of the briefings, and on no day did he ever say anything sorrow-filled about those who have died. Think about this for a minute. What he has said is the number's a big number, and it all gets back to this weird little number thing, and we've never seen anything like it, and all of this, as if it's all reflecting on him being in an amazing moment.
Yes. There's metrics. There's metrics that he's all about numbers, and there's the humanity is completely lost. The question that was asked to him, Mr. President, what would you say to Americans that are scared right now?
Right. And his response?
This is a softball question.
Yes.
That I've been involved in politics. You dream of questions like this that are going to allow you to speak with empathy and authority and show compassion and humanity and connect with people. It's the dream question. And his response is, I would tell the American people that you're a terrible reporter.
Why would you ask that? Right. That was his response. I would tell them you're a terrible reporter. And why would you bring that up? And why do you say people are scared? Don't tell people they're scared, because that's going to make them scared. Like, he lives in some world. Instead of saying, look, my heart goes out every day. If he would commission something that would say, look, this is like a national crisis and almost a war. I don't like the war analogy, but I get it why people use it. Well, then what he should be saying is, we're going to make sure that every name is spoken of the people who died this day. And name the people. Instead, what does he do? He names the people who are on the phone calls with him. He names the leaders of the G20 and all their names, and then names the names of the people who run companies that are making the products that we're going to use to try to fight this virus. And what he doesn't name are any of the people who have died. Yep. This is a level of incompetent malpractice. This is what he is just not up to the task.
Not at all.
And look, I mean, this is literally day one, and all I'm thinking of this podcast, of this feature, why the president's got to go, and all I'm thinking of is what I've heard in the last 72 hours. I haven't even gone back in my memory a week. I haven't even gone back 3 weeks. Most of this is, as farm fresh as you can get. Yep. And you can just go time after time. And look, I hope there's some people who still support the president. Or I'm sorry, I should say it more like this. I hope there's people who support the president who are listening to this, whether on podcast or on the live stream on Facebook right now. And if you are, I would love to hear your input on why you think Rob and I have this wrong. Because if there's something I'm missing, if there's something he's done that we need to give credit for. Now, I will say this. He seemed to be shaken yesterday when he had to come out and say, here is the data that I looked at that told me that there are likelihood of 100 to 240,000 people who will lose their lives in the next few months to this disease. That shook him. But within moments of that, he was riffing on his impeachment. He was talking about all the great work that they've done, how he should get an A+ for this. Like, he could hold that momentarily. And it's almost like you're watching someone who's psychologically unable to live with the truth, having to then separate himself from the truth so that he could get back to the place that is somehow tolerable to him. And if we are dealing with a president who is so emotionally and so mentally restricted that he can't fully accomplish the job, we need to be talking again in this country about the 25th Amendment.
Absolutely.
And look,
Absolutely.
I think the only upside of this is that the president of the United States will come to this conclusion. And I'm going to say this on every one of these podcasts until it happens, or it's no longer an option for it happening. I think he needs to say at some point, because of the call of this country for me to be in charge of the pandemic response, I can only give all of my effort to that, could not legitimately campaign for re-election, so I will not seek the re-election of my party and of this country. That he will take it upon himself, recognizing that he is so incompetent for this job, and this is his way to bank out. This is his chance to get out. And I've had 3 or 4 different scenarios, many of which I've run by you, Rob, about how I think the president could take the high road and say, I'm not running for re-election. Yeah. But this is the final offer that I think he could actually take and say that he's not going to run for re-election.
Oh, I wish that would be the case. But here's the problem. Those scenarios require him to admit in some way that he is incompetent, or he has done a bad job, or it's too much for him. And I don't think he has it in him to admit that. This is a person who has said, that he has never apologized, that he has never asked forgiveness, including those, keep that in mind, those of you, church-going Christians out there who think that, seeking God's forgiveness is a requirement of salvation. Donald Trump has said that he has never sought forgiveness. And so he is incapable of admitting that he has done something wrong. Like he's incapable
it's true. To back up your point, when that same reporter who asked him the softball question asked him yesterday, did you think people have anything should they hold anything against you by the fact that you my phrase, happy talk this thing for 2.5 months? Yeah. And Trump, and he quoted him back to him. He said, saying that this is just going to go away. And Trump's like, well, it is going to go away. I was right about that. All those quotes were right. All those things that I said, it is going to go away. We are going to end up with a vaccine. All those things were true. Like he can't even own, when someone literally says, this is the words you said, he just says, well, they're still true. I mean, it is, It's so
this
dangerous.
President has got to go.
He's got to go because again, it's dawning on me. Like, I don't know what the number is today. It was 3,480 the last I heard. People have died from this disease. Now, look, I know that people die every day. I looked up the numbers of the number of people who die every day. Lots of people die in this country every day. But when people are dying of the same action, the same event, it clusters in a way that has not been put into our normal psyche. This is why a mass shooting strikes us differently than the number of individual deaths that happen in a day. And so this has risen to that level, and we have to be conscientious of this.
Speaking of deaths per day, did you see the report today that the coronavirus is now the number 3 killer of Americans every single day? No. It's heart disease, cancer, coronavirus. 738 deaths per day is what the projection is. It's moved into the number 3 killer of Americans on a daily basis.
If we start facing 30,000 deaths a month, it's unthinkable.
The numbers are stunning.
Like in all honesty, and to just to belabor my dream point here, I think it's very possible that a president of the United States, if the numbers start reaching that level, has to say, I cannot go out and have a conversation about this, that, and the other thing while I'm also having to be at the White House and doing this job. Like he's facing a situation where the response to this disease could push so far that either he has to leave the briefing room and go campaign, or he doesn't campaign in any way that works for him. Like there's not a lot of options about how this can go because anything feeling normal or him running a big rally in the next 4 or 5 months just feels like it's going to be totally off key. Right. When these numbers they're talking about, even if they correct the curve by June and we sort of get back to life, you're going to still have tens of thousands of people dying of this disease. And it's going to be the Trump pandemic. It's the Trump virus. Like it's going to be wrapped with him. And I think it needs to be.
Here's one of my biggest fears. I'm afraid he doesn't have the attention span to deal with this. That he is a person who bounces from idea to idea, that bounces from thing to thing. And you think back over the last 3 years, has there been a consistent policy agenda? Remember Infrastructure Week? What happened to that?
Has that happened yet? Has Infrastructure Week happened yet?
Like, he's a person who seems to me, and I've known people like this in my life. Unfortunately, I've worked for some bosses that are this.
I might be one of them.
That so easily distracted by like the latest thing that there's no perseverance. There's no stick to itiveness with an issue at hand.
Yeah.
And there's bouncing around from one thing, and which is why I think he is so ideal for as a fit for an American culture and a news cycle that is
I see
that flits from issue to issue, and there is no like deep long form sticking with an issue over a long period of time. I fear he does not have the attention span.
So your thought is that he will at some point stop worrying about this. He'll pawn this off on the vice president or someone else, and he will say, I need to go do this other thing. I got to go.
Yes. Wow. I think he does. He is going to grow tired and bored of what needs to be done to deal with this on a daily basis over the long term, and that he will be off, golfing or campaigning.
I mean, I saw one of those memes the other day that was the number of times that he went golfing from the time that the coronavirus was discovered in the United States. It's a sickening amount. Like, as someone who plays golf, that's a lot.
Yeah.
It's just,
and I hope I'm wrong.
Unbelievable.
I hope I'm wrong, but I worry that he does not have the attention span to lead us through this. This is no FDR, this president.
Well, look, maybe if he's effing something, but maybe if this is if he's not in charge of it, if he's not making these decisions, if he's not interfering in phone calls with governors, if he's not saying to FEMA, call me and I'll fix it, and isn't standing behind a podium saying, we sent you, as if the difference between the federal government and the state government is we and you. We sent you this number of masks. No, we didn't send you. No, you use the power that's in your position to make sure that these things happen for the benefit of all of us, because we're all in it together. So maybe having him not be part of this would be better. Maybe we shouldn't fear that. Maybe we should dream for that.
But he tires of leaders around him. And
you're saying the federal government will give up on the work?
Is
that what your concern is?
No, but my concern is that so when he tires of Dr. Fauci becoming a celebrity who gets credit and gets on magazine covers and gets invited on television shows, and he feels like Dr. Fauci is stealing his spotlight, and fires him and brings in someone else who now has to learn on the job, there's no institutional memory.
Oh yeah,
he is. He is undermined. Like what is actually, for those of us that worry at times about the federal bureaucracy, at the very least, there's some infrastructure there. There's some there's some institutional memory that helps keep things moving. He has totally gutted that.
Yes.
And my fear, like he's going to grow tired of it. He's going to grow tired of the people around him.
Yes.
And it's going to consistently set us back. And listen, he's not to blame for the coronavirus. I think he is to blame for how horribly this has been bungled from a governmental leadership point of view. And I think he is directly responsible for how badly this is going in the United States.
I agree. I don't think he's responsible for the actual mutation of the virus into the human system. I think he is responsible for the United States being the center of this pandemic.
Exactly.
Just put it anywhere. Just put it right where South Korea was on the same day of their first case, and the United States same day, and how the two countries responded to this. And there it all is. The reason we are at home the way we are right now, the reason the system is overrunning. Just to give an example, when we came off of the road 2.5 weeks ago for Vote Common Good, and we had to stop our work because things were starting to shut down around the country, and we came back home. I met with my neighbor across the street the next day. We went out for lunch, and he said, wow, what do you think's going on? I said, look, here's why I'm not freaked out about this the way some people are. And I was wrong. I should have been freaked out. I said, here's what I'm sure is happening. Now, this is now 2.5 weeks ago. I said, I am sure that there are convoys running, military convoys running in the middle of the night to get to states where they know these are issues. And they're going to start building out hospitals in parking lots and in hotels. And they're going to be bringing out of the strategic reserve all kinds of medical equipment to build this out, because they have been scenario planning for pandemics around viruses in this country. And I'm saying this to my neighbor. This is what I'm sure is happening. And I was connecting it to what we were hearing with Cole. And he said, well, how would we not know if these trucks were running around the country? And I said, well, because they drive at night. And Cole, who's our bus driver from the Vote Common Good tour, was telling us about how he was on the Pink tour and they had like 50 buses. And I said, these big bands travel with 50 buses? Why do we never see them driving through our cities? And he said, because we drive at night and you're not out on the highways, right? I'm like, this is what's got to be happening, because this is how you respond to a pandemic. Now, what do I know about pandemics? Almost nothing. Everything I know comes from the popular culture. 2.5 weeks ago, I was saying, I'm sure they're going to be building out hospitals. They're going to use the Defense Production Act to take over hotels. This is what they're going to do, and they're going to put people in hotels nearby hospitals, and they're going to start to quarantine people, and this is how it's going to work. Now, look, a little teeny bit of that is now happening, and almost none of it by the government. Franklin Graham's group is the one building out the hospital in Central Park. And finally, the government just is going to open 29,000 beds at the Javits Center in New York, like tomorrow. Well, I was talking about this, and I don't know anything, is my point. Yeah. The point is not that somehow I was the hero. The point is I'm a guy who doesn't know anything about this. So why the people who knew about all of this and they would actually make all this happen were not called into action and did not force the hand? Why FEMA waited till a week and a half ago to take over the coordination of a pandemic in this country? And they said it's because the president didn't give us the order. Now, look,
yes,
they're going to go back over and over and over, and things that ordinary Joe schmoes like me and you know, they didn't do. That's why this is so crazy. And that is happening today. It's not just, well, don't stop complaining about what didn't happen 2 weeks ago and bring a little bit of good news about what's happening today, or a little bit of empathy for the struggling now. The reason is because it's not then and now. It's the same thing. Well, thanks for letting me rant, because when I have to live in my house with my wife and adult daughter and her little baby, I don't get to raise my voice like this. They say, hey, old man, we don't want to hear it anymore. Stop your ranting.
Yeah, and what this president has done, he has not given those necessary orders. He is instead obsessed about things like whose signature is going to be on the stimulus checks that get sent out.
Did he really? Tell me about that. I didn't hear this one.
You haven't heard this?
No, he wants to make sure that it's not.
He is insisting that it's his signature that goes on everyone's stimulus check.
No.
Yes.
Aren't those always signed? No, I have not. Aren't those always signed by the Treasury Secretary, Stephen Mnuchin?
Yeah. John Oliver Light.
Cute.
Bizarro John Oliver.
That's John Oliver's line, right? Yeah, John Oliver says he's like.
Yep.
So Donald Trump is saying that he wants his signature to be the one that's on the stimulus check, as if it's a check coming from Uncle Don.
Yep. Though these are the things that he's thinking about instead of what should FEMA be doing.
This president's got to go.
This president has got to go.
That's unbelievable. Well, this is recording one of the podcast, the Vote Common Good podcast series. This president's got to go, or this president has to go, or this president has got to go. We're going to figure that out. You can say it any way you want. Point being, this president's got to go. If you are a listener to this podcast and you have a friend that you think should be a conversation partner on This President's Got to Go installments, we'd love for you to offer that person up. Or if it's you. Hey, we're also doing a fundraiser around Vote Common Good. It's called Butts and Bums. And it's because so many of us are sitting around on our butts and our bums. Do you know about this fundraiser yet, Rob? Have you been letting
You told
on this?
me. Yeah, you told me. It still
Bums.
makes me laugh.
Yeah, it still makes me giggle. The reason it's called Butts and Bums is because for a $50 contribution to Vote Common Good, we give you a button, the Vote Common Good smiley button, and a bumper sticker, Faith, Hope, and Love, or Wake Up, Speak Up, Stand Up, or many of the other ones, and say Vote Common Good. So you get a button and a bumper sticker, a butt and bums. And also, but here's the idea. People are sitting around in their butts and bums. So people that contribute, and really everybody else will get this too, but everybody who contributes makes this possible. We're going to put out little get up, move around, little exercise videos brought to you by Vote Common Good for people that are all staying at home. So there'll be times during the day when we'll say, okay, it's time to stand, it's time to squat, it's time to stretch, it's time to support. So $50 contribution, go to votecommon.good.com, make that contribution there, or Venmo if you like that kind of thing. Look up Vote Common Good on Venmo and Venmo us the money. We would take it that way. And $50 contributions and up. And I want to stress the and up because we can't get by with people only giving us $50. But maybe that's, maybe you're going to give $55. So consider a contribution and we'll send you a button and a bumper sticker. And you can do whatever you want with that bumper sticker and whatever you want with that button. But they're real fun. And so we want to say thank you. We want you to be part of all of this. And tomorrow, we're doing a training with congressional candidates, so I want you to know about that. We'll be sharing that more broadly after the training happens. Do you want to give a word about the training of candidates?
Yeah, I'm excited about that. There's 435 seats in the in the House of Representatives and 100 Senate seats. So there's about a little less than 500 seats that are up for election this time around. And about a quarter of those have already had their primaries. And of those primary races, there are 35 or so declared primary winners. There's a few runoffs still that have to happen in Texas. But about 35 Democrats won their primaries. Who are now facing Republican incumbents in the House of Representatives. So these are primary winners in races that have already taken place in California, Texas, Illinois, North Carolina, and Arkansas, and I feel like there's one other state, but maybe Alabama. Alabama is it. And so those races are already done. So these are people that will be on the ballot in November against a Republican incumbent congressperson, and we are doing a training for them about how connecting with faith voters can help flip their district from red to blue. And it's a very special training for these 35 folks, and we've got almost half of them now have confirmed to be on the training. Terrific. Be a part of it.
And Rob's part of that, Brian McLaren, Katie Paris, Amy Sullivan. I mean, it's a star-studded training group. And so when you give money and get a button and a bumper sticker, it not only goes to pay for the button and the bumper sticker, but it also makes things like this all possible. So we do need your support, want your support, and those of you who've already donated to us, thank you. We really do appreciate it so deeply. And we'd ask you to do it again and again. Hey, and we also do a thing called Electionary, which is happening, and lots of other stuff on our Facebook page. But Electionary happens on Tuesday nights. It's a video experience for you around someone giving a reflection on a biblical passage for this election. And then we wrap it with some poetry and some music and some art and some talking. It's a pretty good little hour. So, do what we can here at Vote Common Good to ask people to make the common good their voting criteria and to prevent the re-election of Donald Trump, because it's become more and more clear that this president's got to go. So thanks for being a part of the initial podcast and live stream.